Tim Vyasam Tato Jayodhira, Nashtaprayashu Badreshu, Nityam Bhagavata Sevya, Bhagavate Tamashoki Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtaki, Nigama Kapaturu Garitam Padam Shukamakaramita Javisamitam Pibata Bhagatam Rasa Mario Mahora Horishika Karugram. Krishna Swadama Bhagate Damagana, Karuna Stadu Shamasho Paranako Dinoditam. Kamapiada Bishuta Pishuta Vibu, Samapiadana Birambariksaram Pragyaito Maram, Samplasanavanamusanti Nanyataham. Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dino Bandha Jagatpate, Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radhikanta Namostate, Jayatam Sarito Pangol Maham Matir Matirgati, Matsavasha Parambo Jaradana Madana Mohanam, Sriman Rasarasanam Vamsi Vade Karsan Benushan Rupago Gopanatasriyasanam. Divyad Vrindana Nikapadrumada, Srimad Radnagara Shima Sanishto, Sri Sirada Shira Govinda Prestadavi, Seva Manushmarami. Namo Brahmanya Devaya Go Brahmanya Taya Cha Jagaritaya Krishnaya Govinaya Namo Namaha. Mangalam Bhagavan Vishnu, Mangalam Guru Rajaja, Mangalam Vaniri Kaksho, Mangalayatano Hari. Om Narayanaya Vidmahi Vasudevaya Dhimahi Tano Vishnu Prachodhyate. Om Mahadevi Cha Vidmahi Vishnu Padhi Cha Dhimahi Tano Lakshmi Prachodhyate. Mahalakshmi Namastubhyam Sare Sare Hari Priya Namastubhyam Dhanati Tapti Kanchana Goningi Radha Vrindavaneshwari Vishavanasute Devi Pradamani Hari Priya Subham Karoti Kayaram Varagamaras Vishnu Varavara Paran Om Agara Timarandasha Garangana Saraka Chaksurun Miritam Yanatashmai Shri Gurave Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manovistam Stapitam Yada Bhutare Swayam Rupa Karamayam Darati Swapinyantikam Vandeham Sigiru Sita Parakamanam Shri Gurun Vaishnavam Shasi Rupam Saguritam Sahagana Dakanitam Vitam Stam Sadevam Sadvaitam Sabadutam Paritana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Redam Sri Radha Krishna Paran Sahagana Lalita Shubhishikan Vitam Sta Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shiva Sadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare. Good morning, Gene. Good morning, Brent. Good morning, Bobby. Good morning, Rob on Zoom. We're going to have a little overlap from yesterday. Yesterday, we ended with the analogy that the faithful dog can discern his master no matter what dress or costume or garb the master presents himself in front of the dog. The dog, it may be because of the dog's supernatural almost sense of smell. The dog can sniff the master. He can detect the unique scent of the master no matter what gross or physical manifestation the master appears before him. He might be in a bathrobe, he might be in a tuxedo, he might be in a business suit, he might be in his gym clothes, he might be in a swimming suit, he might be dressed as Santa Claus, he might be dressed as a clown, but the dog, because of his super excellent sense of smell, he can sniff the presence of the master, and the master cannot fool the dog in any and all circumstances. However, the master may disguise himself. He will never trick the dog. He will never dupe the dog into believing that he's someone other than his object of affection. And similarly, those who are Krishna conscious, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram Ram. The symptom, the fruit of achieving Krishna consciousness after the practice of sadhana bhakti usually extends over years. It's not a one-shot thing. It's not an overnight. It's not a quick fix. It's not like the fast food windows at Wendy's or Taco Bell. It takes some application, takes some consistency. It'll be a protracted process, but the results are guaranteed, and they're also discernible in the process. During the journey, you'll see mileposts. You'll see mile markers. You've come so far, and you have so far to go. Ultimately, everything's dependent upon the grace of the Lord, but we are making ourselves eligible to receive the mercy of the Lord. We're not forcing the Lord to enlighten us, but we're purifying ourselves in such a way as to be eligible candidates. Now, Krishna consciousness is not about a dress style, a hairstyle. It's not about wearing robes as opposed to a business suit, as opposed to any other type of dress. It's a change of consciousness. And when your consciousness is purified and uplifted sufficiently, you will be happy irrespective of whatever circumstances or whoever comes against you in terms of enemies, backstabbers, and betrayers. In the Bhagavad Gita, the symptom of someone who is Krishna conscious is Yamnabda Chaparanara Manyakena Ramharam Yajman Stito Hi Dukena Gurinapi Vichalyate. I was reading, came across somewhere the meaning of the name Yudhisthira. Yudhisthira. Steer, we see the word steer. Yajman Stito. Stito means to be firmly fixed, unbudgeable, unmovable. You're in one place and no one can take you out of that place. So Yudhisthira is one, and Yudha means battle. Yudhisthira means one whose consciousness is unperturbed, one whose consciousness is not disturbed or colored or displaced, even in the midst of a pitched battle. When there are the screams, the roars of warriors competing with each other, there are the screams of those who are wounded and dying. There's the dust, which is everywhere present. There's blood on the ground. There's speed, the whirling of chariots and the coursing through the air of arrows and javelins. In all of that, any one of those elements would be enough to completely unhinge an ordinary person whose consciousness is unanchored. But Yudhisthira, in the midst of a pitched battle with all these potentially distracting things going on, says his consciousness is unperturbed, he's fixed. Yata dipo nidvatashto nenkate yata yuganashachidam deepena. In the Bhagavad Gita, says a person who's truly Krishna conscious like a lamp in a windless place. Though there may be provocation, though there may be torturing, there may be goading, still someone who has attained that level of consciousness is not perturbed. Yamnabda chaparanada. One who is Krishna conscious feels that there is no higher happiness in this material world. No level of attainment satiates a person totally. A poor person thinks that if they could just become rich, they would be satisfied. But what happens? As soon as they get $100,000, they look at the millionaire and they say, well, I have to become like that millionaire. And when they get $1 million, they look at the billionaire and the discontentment sets in. No sooner do they achieve their goal of going from a poor man to 100,000, then the discontent sits in. They don't want to have 100,000, they want to have 1 million. And no sooner do they become a millionaire, then again the discontent sets in and they want to become a billionaire. And the billionaire himself is upset because he's only the world's 10th richest person. He wants to be the #1 richest person. No matter what level of happiness we get in this material world, as soon as we perceive a higher level of attainment, a higher level of material goods and acquisition, then the happiness that we just achieved, the mountaintop that we just peaked, that we just crested, is no longer sufficient, but we're looking ahead for the next goal, the next mountaintop, being full of envy of others and laboring under the misapprehension that success in life, happiness in life, comes at a certain level of material achievement. It will never come. The donkey thinks that in 2 more steps, I'll be able to grasp the carrot. But when he takes the 2 steps, the carrot's still 2 steps away. And when he takes 2 more steps, the carrot's still 2 steps away. So we have to be more intelligent than the donkey. Realize that at some point, look elsewhere for the happiness. Don't look in this temporary material world. Look to the spiritual world where the happiness has no beginning, it has no meaning, it has no end. Having attained it, yam labda chaparan laga. Having attained Krishna consciousness, to see Krishna in everything, to see the hand of Krishna behind even the actions of your enemies, is such an attainment that it can never be snatched away from the yogi. Seeing Krishna behind all the phenomenal and numinal occurrences of this material world is a divine state of consciousness. And a person who has attained that thinks that there's nothing more to be attained, even though he's challenged by an oppressive environment, challenged by antagonistic people, even though he may be challenged by an illness, but internally, he relishes, he cherishes his divine consciousness. He feels whatever is happening externally, he feels the internal bliss of God. A realized soul is compared to a coconut whose shell, if you've ever been to the grocery store and you wanted to buy a coconut, you don't want to buy the coconut that rattles, because that means there's no pulp. There's nothing attaching the nut, the inside of the coconut to the outside. It's dried up to the point where there's no meat, there's no white meat, and there's no juice. So although the whatever you call it, the nut is inside the coconut, any attachment it has to the outside has been dried up and withered away. There's no white pulp, there's no juice or anything. Even though the nut is inside the coconut, there's no attachment. And that's why when you shake it, you hear it rattling. That's not what you want to buy in a coconut. But whatever happens to the physical body and mind of a pure devotee, that devotee's inner self remains unaffected, just like the inside of the coconut is detached. He sees himself being administered poison, if we're talking of Prahlad Maharaj. He sees himself being put in a pit of snakes, if we want to use the best example, Prahlad Maharaj, placed in fire, thrown off of a cliff, tortured with weapons. But in all of that, he still thinks that he's the most lucky, fortunate person, and is unbudgeable, unmovable in terms of chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare. Even later on, after his father was killed by Nrsingadev, and Nrsingadev wanted to reward Prahlad for his steadfast attachment and his consistent chanting. Prahlad Maharaj says, Mahamrita Magna Chitta, so Chaitato Vimukta, Chaitasha Indriyata. Prahlad said, I'm not worshiping you in order to get something. Because I have Krishna consciousness, I've already achieved the ultimate. And I'm not going to trade that which is the most valuable for something lesser. Having arrived, so to speak, at the top of the mountain, I'm not going to go down to 3/4 or go down to half or go down to base camp. That wouldn't make any sense. Aham tu akamas tram bhakta tram shishami. He says to Lord Nrsinga, I am eternally, I am constitutionally. I was created as your servant, and you are eternally my master. So why would I then ask of you, why would I, the servant, ask of you some boon? That would mean that I'm serving you in order to dominate. It would mean I'm not actually serving you, I'm serving myself, I'm serving my senses in order to get something from you. That's not the case. I'm serving you because that's who I am. And having attained undivided, unmotivated devotional service to you, you cannot force me to ask you for something, because I've already got in you, in the consciousness of you, I've already got the greatest thing. I'm already the most fortunate person. Though I took birth in a dynasty of demons, though I was a pariah, though my own father rejected me and scorned me and tried to kill me, any ordinary person with any of these elements of their life would be at risk of going off into juvenile delinquency, drug addiction, and even worse. But Prahlad was not at the slightest risk of going off course, because he already had Krishna, and having Krishna, you have everything. Having attained Krishna, There's nothing further. There's nothing beyond Krishna to obtain. And one doesn't even obtain Krishna. It's not that one chants Hare Krishna in order to get Krishna. It is the consciousness of Krishna which is greater even than Krishna himself. Devotees don't even chant Hare Krishna in order to get Krishna, because that would mean Krishna is greater than the chanting. Krishna is greater than the consciousness of Krishna, where in fact, Krishna consciousness is greater than Krishna himself. In the absence of Krishna, devotees are even more Krishna conscious, feeling that separation, feeling that mood of vipralamba. Prahlad says, how, my Lord, could you even imagine that I would ask you for a boon? I'm not a merchant. I'm not a businessman. I'm not offering to trade the fruits of my devotional service for anything material or even spiritual. If you want me to ask something, let me just continue to serve you. I believe this is what Bali Maharaj said when the Lord visited him in the hellish planets. He said, "Na kamaya hum gatim, na kamaya hum gatim, tavapada sevayor, na kamaya hum gatim, tavapada sevayor." Lord, I don't want anything other than to engage in the service of your lotus feet. Niskinchana padara vinda bachamya che kam araja kashtam apavarga. Because in the worship of you, I have become completely free from anxiety, from stress, from tension, from fear, from anger. And I'm following in the footsteps of all those great saints and sages in the past, such as Prahlad Maharaj and others, who themselves became free of all material anomalies by virtue of chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Let's just take a few examples from the Srimad Bhagavatam of persons who were supremely challenged, who were supremely provoked. No one would blame them for giving up their faith in Krishna. Considering what happened to them, you could have easily questioned their devotion, questioned Krishna's faithfulness, questioned Krishna's ability to protect them. Consider Parikshit Maharaj. Was saved by Krishna within the womb of his mother. Even before he saw the light of day, Krishna came and covered his mother's womb to protect him from the heat of the Brahmastra weapon, which was launched by Ashwatthama. And yet this Zion of the Kuru race, this grandson of Arjuna, grandnephew of Parikshit, Bhima, Sahadev, Nakula, in the prime of life, in his youth, is brought down by a curse to die within 7 days by an upstart 11-year-old Brahmin boy. How could you let this happen, Lord? How could this happen? If Krishna's, and so many second thoughts, it would seem that for the normally pious person, for the normally religious person, to meditate, to contemplate on where Maharaj Parikshit's faith and trust in Krishna got him, it got him to be cursed to die within 7 days, that would stretch the faith of an ordinary person to the point of breaking. Yet not so with Parikshit. Not so. He welcomed the curse. He welcomed the opportunity to detach himself from the distractions of the kingly duties, to sit down without his royal garb, without his crown, without his scepter, sitting not on his crown, not by his wife's side, not amongst his children, but sitting on a wooden seat outside on the bank of the river Ganges. Name Soro Parayani Brahmana Pibadochara Tadbhaktabhivanishanam. This king, who formerly would have been served gourmet food by the best of cooks, who would have been surrounded by beautiful wives and beautiful children and even potentially grandchildren, he's Yamlabda Chapara. He thinks that there's no one more fortunate than me, having the notification that my death will come within 7 days, having the opportunity by the grace of the Lord to sit on a wooden seat or maybe the grass, maybe Sukadeva Goswami got the wooden seat and Pariksit sitting below him on the grass, outside with only a loincloth on, by the banks of the Yamuna for 7 days without sleeping, without eating, and without even drinking water. Now, what ordinary religious or pious person would think themselves blessed under those circumstances? They would have long ago thrown their faith overboard, abandoned their trust in Krishna, and started to blame him. This is what I get. Krishna, why me? I'm surrendered to you. I'm your devotee. Well, you're a devotee, but your devotion has a lot more thickening. It has a lot more thickening. I heard that the sequence of advancement in devotional service can be compared to these stages. First, you have water, which is very liquidy, not at all firm. You put sugar in that water to sweeten it. And when you add the sugar to the water, it just imperceptibly thickens. Imperceptibly thickens. And then you continue to cook that water and boil it down. And after some time, it becomes thicker, becomes like molasses. And then if you continue to cook that water mixed with sugar, that molasses down, it bubbles and boils and boils, it becomes even thicker, becomes like maple syrup. And if you continue to cook it down, it eventually becomes rock candy, becomes rock hard. So the normal religionist, the normal pious person is just like the water with a little sugar in it. Prahlad Maharaj, Maharaj Pariksit, the rock hard, the rock candy, unbudgeable, unmovable, unbreakable. Now let's look at another story, Draupadi. Draupadi had the 5 heroes, the 5 greatest heroes in the world as her husbands. Bhima, who had the strength of 10,000 elephants, Arjuna, who is the greatest archer, Yudhishthira, the wisest man in the world, Nakula and Sahadev, and they're not off somewhere in a distant country while Draupadi is being dragged into the assembly and tempted to be made naked. They're not down the street. They're not in the next city or the next county or the next country. They're right there in the assembly. The very assembly where Draupadi, Dushasana, being delegated by his evil-minded brother Duryodhana, says, go into the woman's chambers. In the woman's chambers where a lady should have her privacy amongst the other ladies, no man would ever go into the woman's chambers. And here comes Dushasana kicking the door down. And amongst her ladies in waiting, her queen Surindri, her friends, she is grabbed by the hair and dragged out of the private quarters of the harem. Unheard of. Unheard of. And she's a devotee, the last person you'd expect to have this kind of outrage perpetrated upon them would be upon a devotee of the Lord. A normal person, the karma, their bad decisions of their previous life catching up with them, sure, makes sense. Yeah, getting the so you should reap. But here's Draupadi. She hasn't done any sins. She's so devoted to Krishna that she has the same complexion. She has the same complexion of a monsoon cloud as Krishna. Krishna considers her as his sister. She's often called Krishna. She'd be the last person in the world you'd expect that someone would break into the privacy of the women's quarters, drag her and put her into the assembly of men and then start stripping her sariyat. Now, as if that weren't outrageous enough, her husbands were not absent. They're sitting right there. Any one of them could have killed Duryodhana, could have killed Karna, could have killed Duryodhana and saved her. They're 10 feet away. And all she doesn't have any context. She doesn't know about the game of dice. She doesn't know that her husbands have lost everything in a crooked game of dice. She doesn't know that, at least as it stands at the moment, Yudhishthira has lost her. She doesn't know that she's now considered the property of Duryodhana. All she knows is that she's dragged unbelievably from the woman's harem into the assembly of warriors. They're jeering, yelling, insulting at her like a strip club or something. And her husbands are doing nothing. Can you imagine what's going through her mind? And in all of that, she has every right. A lesser person would immediately say, Krishna, what are you doing? Is this how you treat your devotees? Their husbands abandoned her right in the middle of the storm. She's plucked from the private, sacrosanct apartments of the ladies, dragged by the hair, and now someone's trying to make her naked. How much can one bear? How far can you stretch your faith? And yet Draupadi did not question Krishna. She did not blame Krishna. She tried at first to deal with the situation on her own. She tried to call upon her husbands, saw that was not going to yield any fruit. She didn't know why. They were just sitting there on their hands. But she came to understand after some time that they were going to continue sitting on their hands. So she tried calling to them. That's a natural reflex of a wife to call for her husband. That's what a husband does. A husband protects the wife, and they were not doing it. And why? No one told her. She was not privy to that information. Then she tried herself to keep her body modestly clothed, but the warrior who was pulling the sari was too great. Finally, she realized this is all Krishna. Dushasana is Krishna, Duryodhana is Krishna, the dice game is Krishna, the assembly is Krishna. My circumstances are some or other. I don't know why, I don't know how, I don't know what Krishna's thinking, but I sniff. Krishna is my brother, Krishna is my Lord. So I sniff in all of this. When all logic, all reasoning, when I go beyond the normal limits of faith, the normal limits of the mind, I'm sniffing. There's a primeval sense that kicks in, just like the dog. No matter how expertly the master has disguised himself, the dog's sense of smell kicks in, and the dog cannot be fooled. Similarly, Draupadi sniffs Krishna. In all of this, the fruit of her mature practice of Krishna consciousness, of her stita, her unmovable, unshakable Krishna consciousness, is that she sniffs the hand of Krishna in all of this. And at that point, she lets go of her sari with both of her hands. She raises her both hands in the air, and she calls out to Krishna for help. Hare Krishna, Govinda, 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 Govinda. This is the defining pastime of Draupadi. You may say, well, anybody could do that. Anybody could do what Draupadi done. How tough is it? You just let go of your sari and you call Krishna's name. And why is this the standout pastime? There have been many wives in the past history who have been violated, who have been laid hands upon by men other than their husband. And yet we read about none other than Draupadi. Out of tens of thousands of cases throughout history, we only have the case of Draupadi in the pages of the Srimad Bhagavatam. Therefore, we have to conclude that what Draupadi did was not as easy as it looks. She went far beyond the point at which ordinary or even extraordinary heroes of faith would have given up and started to blame Krishna. The color of their faith would have been tinged by doubt, by blame. Another example is Subhadra. Subhadra is Krishna's sister. Draupadi was Krishna's sister in spirit. Subhadra was actually Krishna's sister, come out of the womb of the same mother, Devaki, and yet her her son Abhimanyu was killed on the battlefield by 7 Maharajas. On the same battlefield where her brother, Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, was fighting with Arjuna, her son was slaughtered, her 60-year-old son Abhimanyu. When the news came to her that in the presence of Krishna, the nephew of Krishna, the son of Arjuna, Krishna's best friend, has just been unfairly ganged up upon and slaughtered, it's described that the color of Subhadra's faith in Krishna did not in the slightest way get tinged with doubt or with blame. We all see color. Color is a subtle element. And if you shine color through even a slightly tinned pane, if you have glass with just a little bit of pink pigment in there, and you shine color through it, how easily the color comes out the other side with that little bit of pink, or that little bit of brown, or that little bit of red, or that little bit of yellow, or that little bit of blue. Doesn't take much to just color light. Take pure, colorless light. It takes nothing to inject a little bit of color. And yet, if you compare Subhadra's faith in Krishna to a light, after she heard about the death of her son Abhimanyu, the light of her faith in Krishna was not in the slightest bit tinged. She still had firm, unbreakable, unmovable faith in Krishna. Yam labda chaparam lada. She wasn't going to abandon her faith in Krishna, even being provoked, tested by the death of her son. And why do all these challenges come to the great devotees? Krishna is putting them on display. He's showing off his devotees. He's saying to the world, he's saying to those of us who are not diligent in our practices, he's saying to those who have gotten stuck somewhere along the way, who've gotten complacent and comfortable with doing the minimum, or maybe we do more, but our heart is not in it. The quality of our devotion is not today what it used to be. We've lost some of our gusto. It's become familiar. We've started to take things for granted. Krishna is saying, here's Draupadi. Here's the bar. Here's the gold standard. Here's Subhadra. This is who you have to become. Here's Prahlad, dropped in oil, thrown over a cliff, tortured with weapons, put into a pit of burning oil, put into a vat of burning oil, into a pit of snakes, administered poison. These are the stand-out pastimes of the Lord. Just like in a store like Macy's or Nordstrom's, you have on the ground level facing out the street, you have what do they call it? The display windows. And the people are very well paid. The people who put out the mannequins and dress them and make a tasteful arrangement with the right kind of ambience, and to attract people to based on the samples that are put in the store window, to attract people to go into the store and submerge themselves in the shopping experience. This is Krishna's show window. Prahlad, Krishna is showing off, just like a parent. You know, they meet a stranger, not even someone they know very well. And within 30 seconds of meeting a stranger, they pull out their wallet and they're showing pictures of their kids. This is my youngest son. This is my oldest son. His team went to the state championships in basketball. This is my middle son. He's on the debate club. They've gone to the regionals. He's so proud. So Krishna is so proud of his stalwart, mature, advanced devotee. He's pulling their pictures. He's pulling their stories. This is Draupadi. She's my sister. This is Prahlad. He's my servant. This is Subhadra. She's my sister. So similarly, we're talking about Gajendra. We're in the 68th part of our series of discussions about Gajendra. This is a standout pastime. Gajendra was a great devotee of the Lord in his past life. And with the challenge of the crocodile grabbing his leg, what Gajendra first thought of as being an antithetical situation, what he first thought of was being against him, he's now coming around as the consciousness of his previous devotional service starts to be provoked, unearthed, triggered by this life-threatening situation. He finally comes around to the point of not seeing the crocodile as his enemy, but seeing the crocodile as being sent by Krishna, a representative of Krishna, to save him from his materialistic consciousness, to extract him from the material world. It's like the crocodile is viewed now by Gajendra in the evolution of this pastime as like a life raft. Crocodile is not coming to kill Gajendra. The crocodile is coming to give Gajendra eternal life. Gajendra is now following the footsteps of Draupadi, Prahlad Maharaj, Subhadra, and so many others, that if life throws lemon at us, make lemonade and offer it to Krishna. Most people say when life throws lemons at you, make lemonade. But we have a third thing: make lemonade and offer it to Krishna. That's what Gajendra is doing. In all of that, when he comes to his wit's end, he plucks a lotus flower. He stopped pulling at his leg, which the croc wanted to devour with his trunk. He plucked a lotus flower from the muck of the lake and offered to Krishna, seeking his power. Krishna, you're the root of creation, the fruit of the Vedas, the absolute truth who plays your flute, the ever-existing youth. Your features are unlimited. Your features are unlimited. You're the ingredient of all creatures, whether they have hands, claws, jaws, or paws. They're all your parts and parcels. Those who are smart, engage in your devotional service with all their hearts. You guard those who never depart from the hearth of your sheltering breast. Lord, I realize I've messed up. I confess that I've messed up. I've repressed my service. I've failed the test. And yet I'm thirsty for your mercy, which is greater than my mistakes. I've heard that all it takes to awaken your protection is a single cry of helpless affection. In spite of my shame, I'm calling your name in the middle of the fight. Please reclaim me from the might of the crocodile's bite. Release me from the teeth of the croc. Block ignorance of my life and lock me into devotional service. Let my purpose rise once again to the surface. Lord, I'm knocking at your door. Please keep me close from now until evermore. And when the Lord heard the eloquent prayers of the elephant, he steered Garuda to the spot. He sheared the crocodile's head from his body. When the reptile lay dead and Gajendra was shed of his dread, he resumed the thread of his prayers and said, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hari Hari. The actual fact was that in his previous life as King Indradumna, he had composed 28 prayers in glorification of the Lord. I remember when we went to Trivandrum in the south of India, just before you go into the temple, there's a place, museum, and you can take a tour. They have tour guides. We had an excellent tour guide. He was really, really good. You pay a fee, 30 rupees or something, and then we gave him a tip at the end because he was really good. But one of the interesting things was, there's a big temple, Padmanabha. So Lord Vishnu lying down with Lord Brahma coming out of his lotus flower. You get darshan in there's three different arches. This is the head of Vishnu who's lying down, this huge, big, 20, 25 foot supine deity of Lord Vishnu lying down. So you look through this arch and you see his head and his shoulders. You look through this arch and you see his lotus feet. And you look through this arch and you see his midsection with the lotus flower and Lord Brahma coming out. But what was really interesting is that from the palace, from the royal palace, into the deity room itself, there was an underground private tunnel. And also in the palace, there was like a cupola on the second or third floor where the king could look right down through the door and see the deities. And the kings, one after another, generation after generation, as the guide explained, they were all devotees of Krishna. And when they weren't giving audience to their citizen and judging disputes or fighting wars or laying their life on the line, generation after would write poetry and songs about Krishna, just like we wrote. Gajendra, king of elephants, was sporting on heaven, planet, courteous wives, and lotus-filled lake. Just like we do. They would write poems and they would write songs while sitting on this particular seat, which gave a bird's eye view of the deities. And when they needed more inspiration, they would go down and through a private tunnel, which was meant, and even it was, nobody even knew about it. It was only the kings were aware. They go to a private tunnel, would take them right into the deity room, and they would sit when they got a writer's block, or they needed some further inspiration. They would sit right in the deity room at the feet of the deity and pray to get inspiration to glorify him. So similarly, in his past life, Indradumna had composed 28 beautiful verses. Now he's going to chant these in his current life as Gajendra. But when did you ever hear in normal course of affairs about an elephant chanting beautiful Sanskrit verses? In the natural, it's not possible. But it says, Tesham sati diyuktano bad didami buddhi yenamam upiyantite. Krishna promises in this verse from the 9th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita that those who are constantly engaged in serving me and worshiping me with all their hearts without any break, I give them the understanding by which they can come to me. So Indradumna was constantly engaged in serving the Lord in his past life. But there was an interruption. By the arrangement of the Lord, there was an interruption. First, it was Agastya Muni. Then it was the crocodile in the next life. And it appeared that in his next incarnation, he had forgotten the Lord. But the interesting thing was, Dadami Buddhi Yogam Tam. Because he had been engaged in unbroken devotional service in his past life, in his current life as Gajendra, though he had forgotten the Lord did not forget him. The Lord had not forgotten him. So when we engage in devotional service, it is for the fruit of your devotional service is never to forget the Lord under any circumstances. And yet it appears that it did forget the Lord, but that was also, Agastya was the instrument of the Lord to cause him to take birth as an elephant, to have this extraordinary life of sense gratification, then to come into conflict with the crocodile, then have the awareness of those 28 prayers that he composed in his life go, and here's an elephant in the middle of a lake on the heavenly planets with a crocodile, blood flowing, dire situation, ghastly, gory. Everyone else had given up hope. And he pulls the lotus flower, he offers it to the Lord, and he recites these 28 Sanskrit verses from his previous life. Again, he's in the show window. Krishna is saying, just look at this. It appeared for the purposes of the Lord that Gajendra had forgotten the Lord. But the lesson that we learn, what Gajendra is teaching us, that even if you forget the Lord won't forget you. Nehabrikamanasasi pratyavaya shvapamyasena trayate mahato bhaya. If some or other you forget the Lord due to circumstances or due to the arrangement of the Lord will never forget you. Sometimes we chant in the morning, we have a good morning program, but then we go to work and we associate with all kinds of non-Krishna conscious people, and our consciousness gets buffeted, our conscience gets affected. We can't help but be drawn into the drama, into the politics of the workplace, and we get beat up. See what I'm saying? But that's okay, because if you're in a circumstance where you can't remember Krishna, or there's too many distractions, too many people in your face, it's okay. Krishna will remember you. And oftentimes it's people in the workplace to whom Krishna gives his recollection, his memory better than people who are living in the temple. You don't know. It's a affair of the heart. Narada Muni once was feeling chuffed that he's always chanting Narayan, Narayan, Narayan. Krishna sensed this as they were together on one occasion. Krishna asked Narada Muni, please bring, please take a pot, go to the nearest well and bring me some water and carry the water on the pot on your head and don't use your hands. So Narada Muni was only too happy to do the bidding of the Lord. He went, he got pot from the well, he put it on his head, and without using his hands, he arrived back in the presence of the Lord. And the Lord thanked him. And then the Lord said, by the way, how many times did you chant Hare Krishna? Or Namo Narayan? Narada Muni said, well, I didn't because I was too busy concentrating on balancing the pot on my head so that it wouldn't fall. If it would fall and break, then my service would be interrupted. I didn't chant at all. So the Lord didn't say anything. They resumed their walk. And later on, they came upon a farmer who had, in India, the farmers carry bricks. They have a cloth and they'll carry bricks on their heads. And they also know how to balance them. And the bricks are quite heavy. There'll be 12, 14, 16 bricks on the head. So this farmer was carrying these bricks on his head and chanting, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Then Narada Muni realized that whether we remember Krishna or whether we don't remember Krishna, ultimately it's up to Krishna. Sarvasya chaham vidhi shanivsha jnanam apodam cha. And we have to reach that point in our devotional service where Krishna gifts us, where Krishna blesses us with his own memory. Krishna, by his grace, by his arrangement, he took it away from Gajendra. Gajendra forgot, but Krishna kept that asset. Krishna kept that credit of Gajendra in the bank, gathering interest, and later on he released it with compound interest. He released the remembrance of Krishna from his previous life in such a way that we read throughout the ages, thousands of years later, about an elephant in a lake with a crocodile latched onto his leg, having been abandoned by all his relatives, his wives, and feeling himself most fortunate, feeling himself ecstatic, having reawakened his former consciousness of Krishna. And this elephant is chanting, is about to chant, and this is what we're gonna get into in future days. We've set the scene, we've described the circumstances, and now we're about at the point where we're going to start in chapter 3, which are the 28 prayers that Gajendra the elephant sung in honor of the Lord, which he had composed in his past life. So that's a preview of coming attractions. And of course, we're very much, our little group here is also very much into singing and composing, honoring the Lord with songs and poetry. So this speaks to us very much. It is a bona fide way of retaining and increasing and maturing your Krishna consciousness. It's encouraged by Prabhupada, all the saints, great acharyas, composed. Bhakti Vinod Thakur had 12 kids. He worked a full day as a magistrate for the British government. And yet he still found time between the hours of 10 o'clock and midnight to compose hundreds and hundreds of songs and poems about the glories of the Lord. Having said that, good morning, Jean was the first one to join. The second one was Brett by Bobby, followed in quick order, Natasha. And here's the first verse from Brent. As a faithful dog spies his master, even in disguise, the wise man tries to recognize the Lord before he dies. Oh my gosh. Wow, that is so good. What do you think? If you guys like that, can you give your hearts and your thumbs up for Brent? Will you do that? As a faithful dog spies his master even in disguise, the wise man tries to recognize the Lord before he dies. Yes. Where are mine? I can't find mine. Insert an emoji. Okay, here. Is that mine? Did it come up? I'm clicking on a heart. Oh, it's going into the comment section. I don't know what I have to do to make it go up. I can give a thumbs up. Yeah, okay, there we go. Well, I don't know about you guys, but I just sent a thumbs up there. I sent another one. This is worth some praise, guys. Let's see it. Let's see it. A faithful dog spies his master even in disguise. The wise man tries to recognize the Lord before he dies. Nice. Anjali says we have to be more intelligent than the donkey. Brittany, thanks for coming to the feast last Sunday. I saw something on the internet of you doing some very difficult yoga handstands in the middle of snow. Congratulations on your level of expertise. That was pretty impressive. Another one from Brent. A coconut without juice is of no use. You must begin to find Krishna within, or your connection will be dry, detached, and loose. That's one meaning. That's one interpretation. The other interpretation is that you want the coconut, the center of which is loose, because it's an example of a sage who has achieved detachment, although still within the body, there is no connection. There are no attachments between the inner self and the outer self. So he sees the body, the physical body, going through all of its motions throughout the day, walking, talking, speaking, eating, evacuating, from a vantage point of detachment. And that's the example of the dried up coconut. Okay, I'll give you one last chance here before Rob comes on. And in anticipation of Rob's rhymes, to give us some hearts, some thumbs up, some activity there. To you, Rob, what do you have for us today?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. I'm unfortunately on the road, so I wasn't able to take notes, but I do have one just kind of falling around in my head.
Okay.
So the croc will rock your material socks so that you'll open the door when Krishna knocks.
Okay, there's a lot of echo and distortion. Maybe you could say it a little slower.
The croc will rock your material socks so that you open the door when Krishna knocks.
The croc will rock your material socks so you open the door when Krishna knocks. That's cute and very much to the point. Thank you for that. I will add that on. In the meantime, once more, as a faithful dog spies his master, even in disguise, the wise man tries to recognize the Lord before he dies. That's got to go into a song somewhere. All right, this has been Transcendental Tuesday. Appreciate your jumping on board, and look forward to congregating through cyberspace about this time tomorrow. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.